Welcome everybody to our October webinar. This is an unusual time for us, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Sydney time, but this is quite early in the morning for Christina in Germany. So we're grateful to you for getting up early to be with us. We've got a number of people on the call who are members here in Australia and maybe one or two from other parts of the world. And today we're going to talk about the 10 biggest mistakes that companies make in China, which I think is a great topic because it's always good to learn from other people's mistakes and avoid them ourselves. And also, Christina, being based in Germany, I know you have quite a European flavor in terms of your client base. And so here in Australia, we're quite used to hearing stories from the Australian side of successes and failures, but it's unusual for us to get the European perspective as well. So I think it'd be great to hear some of your case studies and examples of clients you've worked with in Europe and some of the adventures that they've had in China so that we can learn a bit from them too.
I wrote this ebook about the 10 reasons why some companies are not successful in the Chinese market. And I based a lot of the content on mistakes that I have personally made going into the Chinese market. And my thought for today's presentation was actually to take the 10 reasons and provide a case study of what happened, why the company was not successful. Many of them are personally related to me, and then some others related to my clients. So reason number one is refusal to adapt. And it's not just me that experienced this. This is actually something that I see with the majority of SMEs, even larger mid-sized firms in terms of what they do. So I'm going to use myself as a case study because I think we did it on a grandiose scale back in the day in 2003, 2004, 2005. Where we went into the market, and being that we were a Hong Kong headquartered firm, the perception in-house was that whatever we have in Hong Kong, we can replicate in China. And we can do exactly what we do internally in terms of administration and compliance functions as we do in China. Okay, and the perception was Hong Kong is a neighboring country, it's part of China, it cannot be that different. That was what everybody was telling me. And then I moved to Shanghai in 2003. So it started off for us with finding an office space, lease agreement. We never actually asked a lawyer to review the lease agreement. So when it came time, overnight suddenly, that our rental price went up by 50%, and we had no say whatsoever in that negotiation because of how thin our lease agreement was. We had 30 days to find a new office space, right? Another thing was employment contracts. We never asked a lawyer in China to provide us templates of employment agreements or even to provide employee handbooks that were PRC related legal documents. What we did in order to save cost was we took our legal documents that we utilized in Hong Kong and adapted them to the Chinese market. So when we had our first employee who sort of went rogue within the first 9 months of our operation in Shanghai, again, we had absolutely no leverage on the negotiation of that discussion. On top of everything else, we also didn't speak to a lawyer or to our own payroll agent to talk about how to handle the termination. I mean, we were completely naive and innocent. Now, what these two very simple experiences taught us was, one, we paid so much money out of pocket for the termination compensation of that employee that it broke our budget for the first year. And that employee knew that we didn't have the knowledge level. So she negotiated herself into an amount that was absolutely ridiculous, but tied us in a corner that we had nowhere to get out of. And it was purely because we followed the system that we had developed in Hong Kong. And we didn't adapt it to the Chinese market. In terms of lease agreements, I mean, that was, again, 30 days. I had to find a new office space. My attention and my focus was purely on that and not on the business, right? So all of these two examples are just two very simple examples to highlight our own refusal to adapt in the Chinese market. One, to save cost, meaning, you know, I didn't get a lawyer, a labor lawyer on my speed dial, or just generally a lawyer on my speed dial to help me out of situations. I was left to defend for myself without having the knowledge level to actually properly negotiate myself out of those situations. And it cost us a lot in the first year. And when I look at SMEs that are entering the Chinese market, the first 5 years of their journey is the most critical, because you're looking at every penny. You're really on a tight budget. You're trying to control your funds. You don't want to get this external help or advisory because it just costs money. And for many, they make the assumption that whether they're in Australia, New Zealand, the US, or Canada, they can just take what they have and adapt it by just changing literally that the place of arbitration is China. And that's it, right? You can't do that. Reason number 2 is too much or too little involvement in the detail. Now, when I get clients who approach me to incorporate their entities into China, they go into the details. They want to know everything about the incorporation because there's a sense of fear of we're committing a certain investment capital into the market, and we have to make sure that we know exactly everything is transparent about the corporate structure that we're developing into the market. But the minute that the company is set up, they have the first person employed, suddenly they disappear. The amount of attention that is then placed in the actual running of the organization goes to zero. I mean, one of the beautiful things in my perspective about China is the fact that you have to do management reports on a monthly basis, which means you get to review your management reports every single month to know what is your current status within your China organization, which is critical during your startup phase. But I have clients who, the minute the company is set up and they paid so much detail into that, they don't even look at the financial management reports that are being produced and wait till the year end to make any form of adjustment. And then there's the big question mark, why aren't we profitable yet? That always comes to me about year 3, year 4, year 5, where it's, why aren't we profitable yet? Well, if you don't pay attention to your business and the ongoing management of that business, especially from a financial perspective, how do you expect to grow, right? So that's the too little involvement. Then comes the too much involvement. Now, too much involvement means that, and I'm one of those, where I hate to delegate because in my mind, I can do things better than anybody else. Now, what's the point of me having a team of people if I'm doing everything myself and I've got all the work on my shoulders? I can't grow an organization if I do that as well. So it's taken me a long time, it's taken me years to formulate a system where I am trying to delegate a lot of the compliance work of our own organization, the administration work, so that I can focus on the business and the growth of our business within the Chinese market. There has to be a balance between the involvement that you place in your China business, and you have to make sure it is very clear what your responsibility is as a leader or as an entrepreneur, and what you're going to be delegating to your team, or even outsourcing to third parties, but making sure that you have all of the data at your fingertips to make the right decisions at the right time. Reason number 3 is insufficient care when hiring. And I truly believe this. A business is only as good as its people. You can only grow in China with a solid team that is supporting you. All right. So the question that I ask all of my clients is, do your employees have the talent, the creativity, the skill set to take your business forward? Are you utilizing them in the right job functions to bring your business forward? Now, I am an absolute perfect example of this, especially during my startup phase, which was 2003 to pretty much 2010, which is a 7-year period, which is longer than most people would expect, because I hired people, but I was too scared to fire people. So when I knew that I didn't have the right person on my team, I was so scared to rock the boat and to cause any disruption within my own organization that I kept the bad eggs within my own organization, which prevented me from moving forward. Now, I had a client they had a production facility in Shanghai. And the new GM was actually a very good friend of mine. And she approached me one day and she said, I'm in a bit of a dilemma because I have a finance director who's been with the company for over 10 years. But she said, Christina, she's lousy because she has the old-fashioned mentality of a CPA. She's not adapting herself to the times. She's not adapting herself to new software systems. She can't advise me when I sit down with her to talk about the P&L or the balance sheet or to say, you know, how we should be using the fund. She sits there like a solid rock and doesn't respond. Now, having a finance director in China that sits like a rock and doesn't advise you on how to make important decisions is useless. But this person had been employed for 10 years. That meant now to terminate her would have meant 10 months salary for compensation, if not more, because you also have to give 30 days notice period, etc. And they just did not have that in their budget to make that termination. So they made a decision to keep her on until retirement, knowing full well that she was useless, paying her an extreme salary, which quite frankly was wasted money out of the budget, and hiring more talented individuals underneath her. But eventually it caused also a disruption within the finance team, right? So all of this regarding insufficient care when hiring is so critical. You need to be able to delegate and have employees that help you bring your company forward. Number blindness. Now, anybody who is not a finance person in China, they suffer from this. For some reason, there is this, I don't know whether it's a fear or just an ignorance to reading and looking at P&Ls and balance sheets and cash flow statements and bank statements, etc. I don't understand it, but for some reason, people want to avoid looking at those documents. As a corporate service provider for the last 17 years, I can tell you, we churn out management reports on a monthly basis. We send them to our clients. And for a good 15 years, I had one client who responded to us on a monthly basis asking for a phone call to go through those documents. 1 in 15 years. And these are all SME grouped clients, okay? It was like pulling teeth to get clients to sit down and go through their P&Ls and balance sheets. It is critical for anybody when you're going into the Chinese market, particularly in that startup phase of operation where, like I said before, every penny counts. You got to read your financial management reports. How can you make a decision to either pivot your organization, keep it moving in the direction you're moving in right now, or halt certain aspects if you don't look at your management reports? Accountants in China are reactive. They are not the most sociable and proactive of individuals. So you as an entrepreneur and leader have to be the one that sits down with them to get the information you need to make decisions. Market assumptions. Now, David and I actually had a very interesting conversation a couple of days ago because my perspective on China is if you don't do market research, there is no point in you going into the Chinese market. If you don't have data at your fingertips to make decisions on how to develop a channel strategy or how to create your business plan or how to create your budget, what is the point of going in? Okay, you need to know your market in China like the back of your hand. And if you don't have that data, whether it's competitor benchmarking, understanding price points, market segmentation, doing focus groups, especially if you're in the consumer sector, just generally getting a feel of what is going on in your market. Now, I'm the type of person that if I do research, I like to be on the ground to do it. I get a better perception when I am on the ground in China. And for many people, that will also be their way of investigating. Unfortunately, with COVID and not being able to travel there, we are left to other devices. So what can you do? You go to a market research specialist and you get data about your market to make the right decisions about going in. I have a friend of mine who runs a market research firm specifically for the Chinese market. And I mean, the stories she tells me about companies' perceptions, her focus is healthcare and pharmaceuticals. The assumptions that people make about who their market is in terms of consumers is complete reverse of the reality. And they make those assumptions, again, because they're not willing to adapt. They make those assumptions because of the media, because of home jurisdiction data, not because they have the actual facts of getting the research done. So don't make market assumptions. Know your market like the back of your hand. So reason 6 is control freak leadership. Now, I had this situation in my first year where the first employee I hired was a bad egg. And unfortunately, when I went into the Chinese market, again, I was using this individual probably too much in terms of sharing information about the business, making things probably a little bit too transparent for her, that being that she was a bad egg, she then utilized that against me. So with that bad experience, when I then started to hire my new team members, I was too scared to share information, to share too much information. And I went into a phase of control freak leadership, which meant that I refused to delegate work because my philosophy was, I don't want them to know too much. And in some instances, I do it better. Now, this is absolutely wrong. If you're going to hire employees in China, use those employees, empower them. This took me a long time to realize. I am a foreigner in Shanghai. I am not a mainland Chinese CPA. I will never know the accounting laws and regulations like my team who has studied that in Chinese universities will know. I also believe on this whole point of control freak leadership is you also have to develop an ecosystem of, or a network of individuals that can help you, that you can delegate work to. So having, for example, a lawyer on your speed dial, or having a network of supply chain professionals, or marketing professionals, HR professionals, a network of service providers, and friends that can also act as mentor and coaches for you that help you to then release some of this control freak concept. Talking to people to share your war stories and whatnot in the market is real therapy to be able to then say, you know, we're all kind of in the same boat. Let's now encourage our staff and our team and then utilize our ecosystem of people that can help us to move forward. Marketing bias. When I help clients create their budgets for the Chinese market, and particularly now that we are in a consumer boom in China, companies or brands that are approaching me for their China market entry, they don't really understand the amount of money and resources that is required to go into building a brand in the Chinese market. And the first question I usually ask my clients when they come to me is, how much financial resource do you have to enter China? Do you have a number in your mind? Have you created a type of budget to understand what is your financial capability of going in? And the second is, what type of time resource do you have going into the Chinese market and building your brand? You can't keep a low profile and make the assumption that if you have a shop on one of these e-commerce platforms that you're going to sell tremendous amounts of product. It simply won't happen. Now, in your first year, 1, year 2, year 3 of entry, you've got to make that assumption that you're going to be spending a hell of a lot more on a marketing budget than you will in year 4 or year 5 when your brand starts to get known. Okay? Don't make the assumption that everyone in China knows who you are and knows the value of your product. You've got to spend that money really on the marketing aspects, building up blogs and vlogs and publications and marketing campaigns to really get your brand out there. And I think people underestimate, or brands underestimate, what is involved in that step. The next is cultural diversity. So as a business owner, you are your company. And as your company adapts itself to the Chinese market, you have to adapt as well. Now, I think this is absolutely critical, because regardless of the size of your organization, when you are negotiating a deal, your client in China will want to sit with you as a business owner, as the leader, as the entrepreneur, versus the sales guy that brokered the deal. Okay? They will want to have that contract signed by you. Now, currently, you can't go to China to make those signatures or to close those deals or to have those handshakes. But you have to realize that in China, as a leader or entrepreneur or business owner, you are the business in China. People want to see you. You are the one that built the business. You are the brand owner. They want to be able to see you, and you have to make that effort in terms of developing the Chinese market. So one of the key things that I want to highlight here again is attached to the previous slide. How much time, resource do you have as a business owner to develop that market? Yes, you might do business trips initially, but you can't delegate at some point. You will have to continue traveling over to network, to negotiate, to shake those hands, to develop that guanxi with those individuals on a face-to-face basis. The lack of vision. Now, I've got 2 kids, so sharing is caring is a phrase I use on a daily basis. And I bring that into my organization. When talking with my team, but also talking with clients, talking with third-party providers, it's not that I reveal everything to them about the business. I am careful about what I reveal and how much I reveal. But if I don't share what is happening within my organization, how I am looking to grow, and looking at how I'm looking to develop my organization, I don't get ideas given to me. So the key thing in order to grow my business has been this collective vision of getting ideas, not just from my team members, but also from my clients, from third-party providers, from friends, from people that are within my ecosystem. And the last reason is ultimately fear. I mean, everybody that I meet right now, I can tell you, with 2020 being the way that it is, and there being that there's COVID, the amount of remarks that I have, the amount of negative remarks I have gotten on China has been tremendous. There is now this emotional stigma towards China because of COVID, where people just, it seems to me like they're halting all their business in China. They don't want to have anything to do with the Chinese. Okay, so that's one category. And the second category are those that are in a stage right now where they would like to go into the Chinese market. They just don't know how to do it. And there is a sense of fear that they might lose control over their business. First of all, when you're going into China, you need an ecosystem. You need people, you need this network. Even if you might not work with someone, it's always good to have a backup. 2, what does it hurt to have a free conversation with someone and build up on your education? It doesn't hurt anybody. Number 3, it doesn't hurt to ask for a proposal. You cannot make assumptions in China. If I refer back, you can't make market assumptions. You also can't make assumptions on companies that are trying to offer you assistance and service. Talk to people, build up your network. I think that is the beauty of China, is that everybody wants to talk to everybody. Everybody is willing to have a conversation with you, and everyone is willing to have a free conversation with you. Take advantage of that. And you know, don't be lax about it. Just grasp that opportunity to be able to talk to someone.
Great. Well, Christina, thank you for sharing lots of great information today. Thanks for getting up so early to speak to us.
My pleasure.
The sun has moved over the yardarm here in Australia, so we should probably say goodbye. But both of us will hang around for a little bit afterwards in case people want to ask questions. But for now, let me say thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to Christina again for sharing lots of good ideas and some important lessons. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.